Hello YouTube. Ever since first setting foot in Tamriel, the Dwemer have been this enduring mystery, an endless fascination that keeps pulling me in. They are technologically advanced cities populated by automatons that have survived the downfall of their masters, have become a staple of the Elder Scrolls series, and to be honest, the Dwemer automatons are among my favorite types of creatures that we can find in Tamriel. And therefore you probably get my instant fascination when I saw this. An extremely powerful and rare Dwemer automaton that dwarfs many of the other constructs that we can find in their ancient cities. Likely representing the next generation in Dwemer warfare that never came to be, this massive automaton is a miracle of Dwemer technology, likely designed to turn the tide in a war that was already long since lost. This is the story of the Dwemer Colossus, and I will tell you about all that we know about it after the intro. So, the Dwemer Colossus, or Dwarven Colossus, a machine that for the longest time we didn't really know all that much about, other than that it was massive, extremely powerful, and extremely rare to boot, as the amount of encounters with one in the games and the lore can be counted on one hand. And there's a very good reason for that. While it's hard to gauge the intentions of a peoples that have been gone for thousands of years now, it seems that the Colossus was originally intended by the Dwemer to be either an upgrade for its existing centurions in their armies, or an all-new class of war machine produced near the end of their existence, with the very sharp edge of late Dwemer technology seemingly employed to create it. Based on its movement capabilities, it seems to be a far more stable platform than the stiff centurions, walking far smoother, and it's boasting far heavier weaponry. It has a large fire cannon on its left arm used to overwhelm enemy forces on a longer range, and on its right arm, on top of a hand to grab enemies and other things, it has a retractable spinning blade which it can use to decimate hordes of enemies up close. In addition to that, it has a large torso, which it seemingly uses to hide even more weaponry, as it's able to open a port on top of its torso above the head to shoot literal missiles out of, in an attack that the game calls Missile Barrage, indicating that the big torso may actually be so big so it can hold a missile bay in the back of the torso. And on top of that, it seems to have a really hot engine inside it, which, unlike those in other Dwemer automatons, runs so hot that the glow can be seen from the outside. Oh, and did I forget to mention, they have actually self-repairing capabilities to repair themselves using scrap, to repair combat damage. And in addition to that, we can see in concept art that it can create smoke using internal pumps, likely to obscure the vision of combatants, even if we don't see that happening in the game. This thing is an absolute beast and a menace for any battlefield the Dwemer would have set it upon. That is, if they'd ever had the time to mass produce them, because you see, currently Dwemer Colossi are extremely rare, at least active ones. While we can find a few destroyed ones, and even those are very rare, an active Colossus is almost never spotted. The reason for this seems to have been that the Dwemer only started slating them for mass production just before they disappeared, and with good reason. You see, back in the first era, just before the Dwemer disappeared, the Dwemer weren't doing too well. It was in these years that the Dwemer clans of Skyrim were locked in a deadly underground war called the War of the Crag, in which the snow elves that they had blinded and enslaved had risen up against them and were wreaking havoc in their underground cities. And meanwhile, the Dwemer kingdom in Morrowind under King Dumak was also at war in the infamous War of the First Council against the Chimer, who were the gold-skinned ancestors of the later Dwemer or Dark Elves. This war, fought between two former allies, came about when the Chimer discovered that the Dwemer had found the heart of Lorkhan, the divine essence of the god Lorkhan, under Red Mountain, and were creating a framework and tools to use this heart to create the ultimate massive Dwemer automaton, the Numidium, a robot with divine powers of a god. The Numidium would have been the Dwemer's artificial brass god and would have ascended them all to divinity, and everything seemed to have been going great, until the Chimer found out. Because once they found out, the Chimer, under the leadership of Indril Nerevar, made war upon the Dwemer, trying to stop them from creating their own god. Now, this war didn't go super well for the Dwemer. Despite early successes in the north of Morrowind, the Dwemer forces were driven back, and the Chimer ended up besieging the Dwemer facilities at Red Mountain, where the heart was located and the brass god was being constructed. It's at this point, when their defeat was in sight, that the Dwemer's chief architect of the new medium attempted to activate what they had finished of the Brass God in a last-ditch effort to win the war. But instead of an all-consuming power at their hands, which could then smite down the Chimer, instead all Dwemer across Nirn suddenly disappeared when they tried activating the new medium. Why this happened, nobody knows. They may have transcended to some godly plane and everything went right. It may have been punishment for trying to play God. It may have been some weird accident out of the unfinished new medium. It may have been a collective zero-sum. Nobody knows. But what we do know is that it was seemingly in these final years of the war that the Dwemer attempted to put the Colossus in full production. This war machine most likely was meant to strengthen their armies and stop the Chimer advance with its advanced weaponry and nearly invulnerable plate exterior. And had they been able to mass produce the Colossus, they might have played a significant role in the war, meaning that the new medium may not even have needed to have been activated if the Colossus was there on the battlefield. But if that was the case, the Dwemer never put them in mass production and there were never massive amounts of Colossi on the battlefield. This was either due to a shortage of material or workforce, or simply because they started too late, and maybe their assembly plans were taken by the Chimer, or they straight up even failed to start production in time. You see, there are several places where we can find Colossus assembly going on in some of the more advanced Dwemer ruin facilities that we can find. However, the fact that these assembly lines exist mean that they did try to mass produce the Colossus, they just seemingly failed to do so in time. A great example that I tried to get footage for but I couldn't because there's a random matchmaking process that I tried for hours but I failed to get in there, is the Dwemer ruin near Alt-Karak in the north of Vardenfell, where the Dwemer had some initial successes during the war and likely still held territory. This ruin in its loading screen is described as a Dwemer facility built during the War of the First Council, and it's here where we can see an advanced facility where the Dwemer seemingly attempted to mass produce the Colossus for the war effort. This just apparently never came in time. It's also likely that the Colossus just straight up started its design too late. We know from the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind that the Dwemer attempted to create larger robots based on the new medium technology, a prototype for which we can even see in the Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, and it's likely that the Colossus is what came out of these early prototypes, or perhaps it was a parallel project also using the medium technology. That we don't know, but it seems a logical step. As with technological advances on the new medium, likely came technological advances in Dwemer society as a whole. It also seems that the blueprints for the Colossus were sent to Skyrim's Dwemer clans, as there too we can find some Colossus production, likely for usage during the War of the Crag. Although, just like in Morrowind, this seems to have come too late, as when the Dwemer in Morrowind disappeared, so did those in Skyrim. Now, the Colossus to me is extremely interesting. Despite being a big part of the Elder Scrolls' 2017 marketing, the amount of story on them seemed to have always been very small, but I think I managed to piece together at least more story with the little hints that we have, and I think it's a fascinating look at what peak Dwemer technology might have been. While spiders, regular centurions and spheres seem to have been relatively early Dwemer technology, the Colossus, the ballista that we see in Skyrim and stuff like the sentries seem to give a glimpse into later Dwemer technology and may represent a bit of a glimpse of what the Dwemer's next generation of warfare may have looked like. I won't lie, this machine has been among my favorites for a long time now, and the only reason that I haven't covered it before is because on the surface it seemed like there isn't much backstory on it all, but over the last few weeks I delved into the Colossus and through environmental storytelling, design details and other automatons, I managed to piece together its story, I think. And I sincerely hope that you enjoyed this video and managed to learn something new about the Elder Scrolls lore. And if you did, why not give the video a like or one of those hype boost things, it would really help out the channel. Oh, and by the way, look at this, I made another one of those pages for the lore notebook that I'm working on. I'm making it in my own little Elder Scrolls lore notebook. You can buy an empty one in my merchandise store, in case you want to write your own lore notes or, want to use it for studying. That was my mandatory merchandise plug. And now all that's left for me to be done is to thank my top Patreon supporters: Goblark, Bernardo Binda, Gabriel Binda, Volcure of Argonia, RB Dash, Lexicon, Polycom, Sir Otter, Sword of Bushido, Rakai, Mike Willis, Dodo Komodo, James Lynch, Barademas, and Kalakranz. These people, along with all the amazing people on screen, are my Patreon supporters and my YouTube members, and they keep this channel alive. And for that, I am very grateful. Alright, see you in the next lore video. Bye bye.